Welcome to the Football Film Room Show. I'm Nick Kehoe. We've got another great episode for you today. We're going to break down all the action from Conference Championship Sunday. We finally know who will be playing in Super Bowl 60, the Patriots and Seahawks. Some people happy about that. A lot of people probably not. We'll get to all that. But both games were different games, but they were entertaining because they were close. The outcome was in doubt until the end, and that's kind of all you can ask for in a conference championship game. Now, the story of the weekend was, without a doubt, Sam Darnold. He answered all the critics, all the people saying that he couldn't get it done in a big spot, including myself. And I didn't necessarily think he couldn't get it done. I hadn't seen him get it done yet in a big spot. And so I wasn't going to be a betting man and say, oh, yes, Sam Darnold, I can absolutely count on him. But he absolutely delivered. 25 of 36, 346 yards, 3 touchdowns, and most importantly, no turnovers. Because that was the question coming into this game. Which Sam Darnold was going to show up? The one that had played the Rams twice this year had 6 interceptions, many of which, as I wrote about last week, were the result of disguise. Him not recognizing what the Rams were doing, the Rams doing a good job of either completely masking their coverage or slow playing their coverage after the snap. In this game, though, he was outstanding. And there were really 3 things that he did especially well. 1, he put the ball wherever he wanted to. 2, he processed quickly. Any of those disguises, any of those different looks that the Rams were giving him, he had no problems with. And then 3, he threw the ball well in the face of pressure. When there were bodies around him, he did a great job of sliding to find the soft spot in the pocket to throw from. There was one play where his tackle's feet got pushed back in the pocket, pretty much to the spot where Darnold wanted to throw from, and it ho-hum, wasn't a big deal. He just slid his feet to the left, threw back to the right, accurate pass, completion. There were a couple plays where he knew he was going to get hit and still delivered the ball accurately downfield. He was tremendous all around. One of his touchdowns, which was one of the bigger plays in the game, that the Seahawks led 17-13. This was right after the fumbled punt. The very next play, the Seahawks went for the jugular. They felt like they wanted to capitalize on this situation. They needed to score 6. Very first play, they took a shot, play action, max protect, 2 receiver route concept, both going into the end zone. And at the same time, the Rams kind of felt the same way. Defensively, they said, we need to get a stop here. We have to hold them to a field goal. So the very first play, they brought a corner blitz, played cover 2 behind it. It was one of their cover 2 pressures. Sam Darnold saw the blitz, saw his first receiver, Jackson Smith-Njigba, was covered, turned back to the left, and had the middle of the field just wide open. That's probably something that you can blame the Rams, blame Chris Shula for even allowing to happen, playing that coverage and it being left so wide open in the middle. Jake Bobo to the left ran a great route. It was a corner post, beat Kobe Durant inside. And this is one of the plays where Darnold delivered the ball with a pass rusher bearing down on him. It was a perfect throw, and the Seahawks took a 2-possession lead, which really put them in control of the game. It wasn't just Sam Darnold who had a great day, though. Offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak dialed up a number of plays that created advantageous mismatches for the Seahawks, created open receivers, had a couple big plays that came from putting wide receivers in the backfield. I broke this down on footballfilmroom.com if you want to go take a look. But the first one was a 3rd and 5 on the Seahawks opening drive. This was the 50-plus yard completion to Rashid Shaheed. Kubiak put Cooper Kupp in the backfield. That set off alarm bells for the Rams defense where they said, hey, it's 3rd and 5. They've got their receiver in the backfield, a sort of a possession receiver, a great route runner. They're going to do something funky with him. They're going to try to get him the ball for 5 yards and move the sticks. So one of their deep safeties, the one to Shaheed's side, he sat low, ready to help out on Cooper Kupp. So they had 2 defenders accounting for Cooper Kupp, and that put Rashid Shaheed in a one-on-one on the outside against a cornerback. That is something that the Rams try to avoid at all costs because the cornerback position really is their Achilles heel, and it burned him on this one. Shaheed ran right past Darius Williams, won pretty quickly at the line, and then Darnold delivered a perfect ball. Later, right before halftime, the Seahawks touchdown that put them up 17-13, it was another play where they had a wide receiver in the backfield. This time it was Jackson Smith-Njigba. They would end up running a scissors concept to the left, and that's a pretty common concept in the red zone that defenses are generally aware of, but it's not normally coming from a receiver lined up in the backfield. So it was hard for the Rams to recognize it. The coverage ended up dropping Smith-Njigba, and he was wide open for a touchdown. And that's one of those things where you say, if you're the Seahawks, great design, but if you're the Rams, why were the alarm bells not going off when you had Jackson Smith-Njigba in the backfield? You knew he wasn't there to block. He wasn't staying in. And that was something that was a bit of a theme throughout the night, where the Rams didn't seem to do enough defensively to specifically account for Seahawks personnel. Right? They didn't do anything to take away JSN. I'll just keep saying JSN now so I don't have to pronounce his full name every single time. But there were multiple big plays where Clint Kubiak would send a receiver in motion. They would motion right outside of JSN right before the snap. That would make Smith-Njigba the inside receiver, and he would end up getting to run his route against a safety, which is a huge mismatch. And you had the 42-yarder before the end of the first half. He was able to run free through the secondary, and then he ended up being one-on-one against a safety. That's a really tough position to put your safety in. On Darnold's last completion of the day, on that 4-minute drive where they were trying to run out the clock and end the game, they came very close to doing it. But one of their first downs, it was another one of those plays where it was motion. Receiver motioned outside of Jackson Smith-Njigba. That put him in a matchup against safety Quentin Lake. That's a huge mismatch. He turned him around, was easily able to get open for the first down. So I didn't love a lot of what the Rams did in this game in terms of accounting specifically for Seahawks personnel. And that ended up being one of the stories. That ended up being one of the big reasons why the Seahawks were able to have so much success on offense. You give those receivers free releases, and you don't have a good enough pass rush, they're going to be able to create some big plays. Now, I know I said earlier that Sam Darnold did well with pressure, with bodies around him, and he did. When there was pressure around him, he handled it very well, but there were enough plays where the Rams didn't get any pressure on Darnold, and he was able to drive the ball downfield as a result, and those receivers were able to run freely and end up making some big plays. Now, on the other side of the ball, just what more can you say about Matthew Stafford? This is the second time this season that he's gone against that great Seahawks defense in Seattle, picked them apart, didn't commit any turnovers, and his team lost. Back in December, they scored 37 points. Stafford threw for 457 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. They lost the game. And then on Sunday, he threw for 375 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Rams lose again. And this was just another one of those games where Stafford made a lot of big-time throws. Big-time throws into tight windows. He really started to get it going in the second half. Once the Rams were down by 2 possessions, he seemed to say, okay, I don't have a choice anymore. We need to start attacking downfield. First play after that was a 40-yard completion to Colby Parkinson, where he rolled out to the left, threw back to the right, put the ball just over the defender's fingertips, but just a perfect throw. Came back on his next throw to Devontae Adams, did the exact same thing, placed the ball perfectly in his hands, a long handoff downfield, put the ball on the goal line. Then he hit Adams again for the touchdown to make the game 24-20. Seahawks would then go down the field and score. Rams came right back. And this time they actually got stopped, but then you had the taunting penalty on Reek Woolen to keep the drive alive. And what did the Rams do? They went right after him, right after the guy who had the penalty with a double move, knowing that he would be aggressive, knowing that he would try to probably make a play, make up for the fact that he had extended the drive with his own stupidity, and the Rams took advantage for a touchdown to Puka Nacua. Now, again, it's really hard to criticize a quarterback or an offense when they score 27 points. The quarterback throws 3 touchdowns, 375 yards. Probably the 2 biggest drives. I mean, we know the one biggest drive at the end of the game where the Seahawks stopped them on the goal line. But just before the end of the first half, the Rams had taken a 13-10 lead. There were about 2 minutes left. If they could just possess the ball, drive it down the field, maybe get a score, go up by 2 scores, or at least get a field goal try, they could have taken control of that game. At very least, you don't want to give the ball back to the Seahawks, and unfortunately, they went 3 and out. Can't say it was anything bad from a situational standpoint. Can't say it was, they should have run the ball one more time or should have called a different pass play. They just didn't execute. Guys didn't get open. Stafford didn't find anyone. And they ended up punting and giving the ball back to the Seahawks, and then the Seahawks would go on to drive down the field and take a 17-13 lead. So that was one drive that, again, there's nothing specifically I can point to and say they should have done this differently. They just didn't get a first down. They didn't keep the ball for the rest of the half. At the end of the game, it's kind of the same thing. If you look at the tape, there weren't wide open receivers. There weren't any open receivers. On the goal line stand, when it was 3rd down and 4th down, The Seahawks played man coverage on both, and that was a theme throughout the night. They played a lot more man coverage than they normally do. But on both plays, they had two guys accounting for Puka Nacua. They were more than comfortable on the outside, allowing Davante Adams to be in a one-on-one. All their attention seemed to be focused in the middle, and no one was open on either play. The fourth down play, you had two defenders peel off with Kyron Williams when he released from the backfield, which both McVay and Stafford said after the game they thought that was a mistake. That wasn't by design, but they ended up both covering Williams. You had two guys accounting for Puka Nacua. Davante Adams wasn't open. Stafford tried to hit Terrence Ferguson in the back of the end zone, and Devin Witherspoon did a tremendous job playing that route. Made sure to stay underneath him, used the end line as his friend, which you can do when you're in the red zone. That's why it's tougher to throw touchdown passes in the red zone. But nobody was open. Just a great job by the Seahawks who, like I said, they played a lot more man coverage. They got burned by man coverage at times. They're not traditionally a man coverage team, but so far this season they've shown that when they do play it, they can be successful at it. And throughout much of the night, the Rams were able to take advantage, but on those final plays in the red zone, the Seahawks did a great job of covering everybody. And that really ended up being the game. Now again, if we're nitpicking, I wish the Rams had a play call that featured Puka Nacua or found a way to get him open off of motion or with someone else running interference for him. But really, I think this was more about the Seahawks getting a stop than the Rams messing up or anything like that. At the end of the day, though, I'll go back to what I was saying about the Rams a couple weeks ago. They did not play well to end the season. Special teams was a big issue. Situational football, sloppiness on both sides. The defense was not the same as it was earlier in the year. And I said after that Panthers win that I had thought coming into the playoffs that the Rams, they were ready to reset. They were going to put that bad football behind them. It was just the malaise of the long regular season. And once they got in the playoffs, they'd be able to turn it on and pick things up on the defensive side of the ball and just be better everywhere. And the defense really didn't pick it up. Just like in that Panthers game, when the Seahawks needed a big play in the passing game, they got it. They got it for big plays. They got it for touchdowns. And then at the end of the game, they were able to convert multiple times. Had the one completion to Cooper Kupp, the somewhat controversial completion to him. They had the completion to Jackson Smith and the Jigba that I talked about earlier where they got him matched up on Quentin Lake. There was another holding penalty that led to a first down. But the pass rush was just not enough for them. And when your secondary, or at least your cornerbacks, are a concern, are an issue, are something that offenses want to target, and you don't get a good enough pass rush, you're going to allow 31 points. But really, once again, special teams reared its ugly head. A fumbled punt leading to 7 points, that ended up being the difference in the game. I know it's just one play. We can throw our cliches out there that, there are a lot of other plays they could have made, and that's certainly true. I guess it's tough to say that just one play determined any game, but that was a pretty big play. And it's something that continues to be an issue for the Rams, for Sean McVay, really anyone from the McVay-Shanahan tree. Special teams seems to be something that's, I don't know, whether it's not coached well or emphasized or enough resources aren't put into it. It seems to be a consistent trend. But having good special teams, that's one of those things. That's one of those things around the margins that makes the difference between winning late in the season and going home. And it played a huge role in the NFC Championship game. You look at the two teams that are going to the Super Bowl, both of them are good in special teams. All right, let's move on and talk about the AFC Championship game. Before we do that, do any of you remember Karate Kid 3? Great movie from the 80s. Some phenomenal characters in there. Some really interesting storylines as well. One of those storylines was that the main character, Daniel LaRusso, wax on, wax off, he was competing in this karate tournament, the All Valley Karate Tournament. And for reasons that no one can logically explain away, in Karate Kid 3, he didn't have to compete in the entire tournament. He just got a free pass to the finals. Truly unprecedented. The reason I bring that up is because, does that sound familiar to any of you? Is there an AFC football team that kind of got a free pass to the finals? A free pass to the Super Bowl? What? Don't look at me like that. Patriots fans, I know you're looking at me like that. We can make jokes. We can have a good time with this. Okay, I'm sorry. I take back everything I just said. The Patriots had one of the rougher roads to the Super Bowl that you will ever see. Really difficult regular season schedule. Had to get through all the champions of the past during the postseason. The NFL gods just put one obstacle in their way after another, and they just overcame. Really inspirational team. There were like 100 different moments in the regular season and the playoffs where you just said, this team, it's done. All the odds are stacked against them. They're not going to be able to do it. There, is that better? All right. Now that that's out of the way, we can really talk about the AFC Championship game. And this was a game that the Patriots won because of, well, you can probably guess, if you've listened to this podcast before, situational football. I know, you're tired of hearing it. I'm tired of talking about it, but it's the same thing every week. It's the same thing every year. The playoffs are about playing to situations, managing the game. And you got to give the Patriots credit for doing that, even though it was against a backup quarterback. But this one started off like a game where you could easily see the Broncos winning. Jarrett Stidham, he didn't look great from the beginning. I don't think you can say that. He missed an easy wide receiver screen that, had he just connected with his receiver, that would have been a touchdown. You can go back and look at it on film. There was nobody there if the receiver caught that ball. But it was just an errant throw by Stidham. Luckily, no harm, no foul for the Broncos. The very next play was the deep throw to Mims. I don't know that you'd call it a coverage bust. Looked like Christian Gonzalez was expecting a little bit of help in the middle, but the safety to his side was turned to the other side of the formation, so there was a big opening in the middle of the field. Broncos ended up getting in the end zone a couple plays later. Boom, they're on the board, 7-0, and now it seems like it's going to be a game. Now it's not something that's just going to be a laugher where the Patriots can just run away with it because the Broncos aren't going to score at all. They're up 7-0. And on the other side of the ball, the Patriots looked uncomfortable. I can't tell if they were just caught in between on what they wanted to do. There were sort of two schools of thought going into this game. One was that you want to get up big early so that the Broncos had to be one-dimensional, had to put the entire game on Jarrett Stidham. Or you could take the approach of just being conservative. You know your defense is going to be able to more or less shut down the Broncos. And as long as you don't make any mistakes, you'll just be able to wait them out. But it did not look good for the Patriots offense. Drake May's first throw, that ball should have been intercepted. It almost would have been a pick six. Again, I don't know if it changes the game or anything because the Broncos hadn't scored at that point. Denver showed a blitz on this play. It was the first third down of the game for the Patriots offense. They ended up dropping out. And May, I don't know how he didn't see Hufanga dropping out, but he was right in the passing lane and at very least should have intercepted the ball. I think he got leg whipped or hit by his own defender who was covering the intended receiver because he looked down at his knee after the play like he was injured. At very least, that showed how Drake May wasn't really seeing the field that well. And that continued throughout most of the first half. He was short-arming throws. The Broncos were able to get some pressure on him. They were keeping everything in front of them. Patriots had no answers. They couldn't do anything in the run game. The Broncos were in total control. And that kind of brings us to the decision point or one of the inflection points of the game. Of course, this was the 4th and 1 from the Patriots' 14-yard line. And let me just say this. I think there were two schools of thought here. After the fact, everyone is saying, oh, you had to kick the field goal there. And to be fair, I don't think that's just completely hindsight 2020. I think there are a lot of people saying at the time, just take the points. You got a backup quarterback playing. Make it 10-0. Make it an uphill climb for the Patriots. Put them behind by 2 possessions. They're already really uneasy on offense. If you can make them press more, they might start turning the ball over. Broncos obviously have a really good defense. But I think there's another side of this argument here that is completely valid, and that is you have a backup quarterback. You don't know how many times you're going to get that close to the end zone. You got to make it count. Because at that point in the game, they were about 20 minutes into the game, a third of the way through. The Broncos were in total control. They were moving the ball well. They weren't world beaters by any means, but it seemed like getting a yard wouldn't have been a big deal, wouldn't have been a completely insurmountable task. And again, at that point in the game, we didn't know a snowstorm was coming. I don't think anyone thought at the outset of this game that it would be a 10-7 final score. I don't think anyone thought it would be a 13-10 game. I think if you were the Broncos, based on how good the Patriots offense was during the year, you sort of figured if we can win this game 17-13, 17-14, something like that, that's our formula for winning. But we need to capitalize when we're down here. So I don't have that much of a problem with the decision to go. Obviously, looking back on it, would have been nice to have 10 points on the board if you're the Broncos because you lost 10-7. But I have less of a problem with the decision to go for it than I do with the actual play call. The play call was a basic, one of those plays that you see installed very early in training camp. Every team runs it. It's sometimes you look at it and you say, man, that seems like such a basic play, and you see teams fall for it all the time. They don't get a stop against it, but I think you need man coverage against that type of play for it to work. And the Patriots to that point in the game have been playing a little bit more zone than we all thought. They dialed up the man as the game went on, but to that point, it was a little bit more zone coverage. They were trying to make Jarrett Stidham have to make throws into windows, play with timing. Someone who hasn't made a start in 2 years, it's more difficult for him to do that than to maybe throw a go ball in a one-on-one situation. And one of the issues with the plays was that they didn't do themselves any favors with motion. They didn't create any indicators to let Stidham know ahead of time, okay, this is zone, this is man, maybe we can just take a delay of game. If it's zone, maybe we change to another play, maybe we just run it. But they didn't do anything to give themselves a bit of a clue to what New England would be doing. And the play was doomed from the get-go. Also, it was into the boundary, so there wasn't a whole lot of room. If the design didn't work right away, it really wasn't going to work. Stidham was going to run out of room and have to throw the ball back across the field because he's running into the boundary. He's rolling into the boundary. So it was the play call I didn't like. I thought just running a fullback dive may have done the trick. The Patriots D-line did shift right before the play, and they squeezed in the middle, so they hit a lot of guys inside. So it wouldn't have been easy to get that first down yardage, but I have less of a problem with the decision to go for it than I do with the actual play call. But people are saying right now that that was the turning point in the game, and it really wasn't. Patriots got the ball back. They did get a first down, but ended up punting it back to the Broncos. The play that changed the game was Jarrett Stidham not getting rid of the ball on a screen pass that was a broken play, and then trying to do a two-handed shovel pass at the very end with a defender on him. What's that thing we've been talking about? Situational football? You're up 7-0. It's third down. The screen is a broken play. You're calling the screen because it's man coverage and it's a blitz, so you know defenders are going to get in quickly anyway. Not to mention it's a screen, so the offensive line is letting defenders in. But it's not there right away. Throw it in the ground. Throw it out of bounds. Tuck it and take a sack. Who cares? Do not pump multiple times trying to hope that your running back will eventually break free. Just live to play another day. I do not get why more quarterbacks can't master this simple concept. You don't need to be an NFL quarterback to know that. You don't need to be a starter. It's not an excuse that he hadn't played in 2 years. He should have gone into the game knowing that just managing the game was his ticket to success. And he certainly should have known that at that point in the game when it was 7-0 and the play was dead right from the start. But that's what turned the game. Not the fourth down call. The fumble on the screen that gave the Patriots a 12-yard field when they couldn't move the ball at all. And without that play, in retrospect, with the weather that came in the second half, Patriots might not have scored more than 3 points. But to win a game like that with a backup quarterback against a Patriots team that has a very good defense, a very good offense, even though they haven't shown it in the playoffs, great special teams, you can't make those errors. You need to make a play on special teams. They weren't able to do that. You need to get a turnover on defense. They weren't able to do that, even though they had that opportunity early in the game. And the other thing is that your receivers need to make some plays. When there's a 50-50 ball, when there's a contested catch opportunity, they need to come down with it. And there were multiple times in this game where it wasn't a perfect pass. It would have been a great catch for one of those receivers to come down with it. But multiple times, they weren't able to make the play. They weren't able to make that contested catch that you need to when you got a backup quarterback playing. Cortland Sutton missed one. I know the throw was behind him. Lil Jordan Humphrey in the second half, actually in the fourth quarter, he had a big third down where he was going against Marcus Jones, who he has 8 inches on, and he couldn't get his body in front of him enough to shield him off from being able to knock the ball out. Those are the missed opportunities on offense. And going back to special teams, look, I know the weather was difficult. You missed 2 field goals as well. 2 turnovers, 2 bad turnovers, not making contested catches, not making plays in special teams, missing 2 field goals, not going to win the game playing that way. Now, on the other side of the ball, the Broncos defense, there's not a whole lot you can complain about. They took a great approach in this game. They played a lot more zone than they have all season. I think they were only about 10 to 13% man coverage, and they were the number 2 team in terms of man coverage frequency this season. So that was a big change for them defensively, and it was a smart one. It was one that I talked about before the game because Drake May, despite his struggles in the playoffs, he's been good against man coverage. Last week against the Texans, all 3 of his touchdowns came against man coverage. So the thought was, okay, if you can play zone, don't let him plant his back foot and get the ball out on a one-on-one somewhere. Make him have to work through his progressions. Your pass rush would have time to get to him and either sack him or make him uncomfortable. Have him throw the ball to the wrong place or just check it down. And the Broncos did that. They completely shut down that passing game. And this was before the weather was even a factor. I know there was a snowstorm in the third quarter, but Drake May still finished with 86 passing yards. He did not look good. He did not look comfortable. He missed a bunch of throws, like I said earlier, but he ended up making some plays with his legs. Now, this is one of those things where you say, good job, Drake May. Good job, May, of when you saw an escape lane, taking it because the pass game wasn't working. So pick up yards any way you can. You got to tip your cap to him for that. At the same time, I look at the Broncos and I say, those big scrambles were more the result of you presenting escape lanes right in front of May for him to take. And that's just something that you can't do to a quarterback who's dangerous scrambling, but you certainly can't do it when they are not throwing the ball well, not seeing the field well, looking uncomfortable in the passing game. And 3 of those big scrambles came from those defensive tackles in the middle, whether they were stunting, whether it was just they were getting pushed around in the middle. They did not do a good job of keeping May in front of them, keeping him in the pocket. And then you have the third down at the end of the game, the play where May kept the ball without telling anyone. Naked boot, naked keeper. Maybe it wouldn't have made a difference because the Broncos' offense wasn't really moving the ball anyway at that point. But it was a 3rd and 5. The Patriots were more than content and had signaled they were more than content just to use conventional runs to run the ball into the middle of that defensive line. Just keep the clock moving, protect the ball. More concerned with that than picking up the yards. But there were 2 possibilities really on that 3rd and 5. They weren't going to throw it. So it was just they're either going to run with a running back, conventional run, or they're going to boot and let May keep it. And I was a little stunned to see that the Broncos were so caught off guard by that they had no one on the backside who was ready to take him. Again, if they stop him, Patriots punt the ball away, Broncos have to drive the field. Probably doesn't happen anyway, so who knows how consequential it was. But between that and the scrambles they allowed May to have, that was just the one part of the Broncos' game plan on defense and execution on defense that left a lot to be desired. Certainly some plays there that they'll want back when they look at the film. But now the matchup is set for Super Bowl 60, Patriots, Seahawks. Just like everyone predicted at the beginning of the year. All jokes aside about the Patriots' lack of competition during the regular season and let's just say the fortunate events that have happened to them during the playoffs, I don't buy the narrative that they're just going to get run off the field by the Seahawks. Their defense is too good. Vrabel's ability to manage a game, make opposing offenses play ugly football, that's going to keep Darnold from going off like he did against the Rams. Even if he plays a clean game, I don't see him throwing for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. Vrabel will manage the situations of the game. His special teams will be good. So will the Seahawks, by the way. I think they're evenly matched in that area. And I have to believe that the Patriots' offense is going to play at least a little better than they have during the postseason. That's it for today's show. We will have a Super Bowl 60 preview podcast coming out next week. Get into all the metrics, get into film study, tell you where each team can take advantage of the other. Looking forward to doing that with you, and I'll talk to you next time.